Hello, my name is Enoch from African Voices TV. Today's event is an event which has shocked the whole world. This event is none other than the death and the murder of George Floyd, an African-American who was murdered by white police officers in Minneapolis. This event culminated into protests, campaigns across the whole world, from America to Europe to Africa, even in other areas that were unheard of that have just picked up the campaign of creating change. And this change is none other than racial equality, stopping racism, fighting injustices across. African Voices managed to cover this event in Sheffield. Like any other areas across the country, there were protests. Some were peaceful, some resulted into violent protests across, but overall, they all sent one message. And that message was about justice. The message was about fighting racial inequality across. Our reporter, Balo Jallo, covered this session for us.
Hands up! Don't shoot! Hands up! Don't shoot! Hands up! Don't shoot! Hands up! Don't shoot! Hands up! Don't.
This may have started thousands of miles away, but as you can see here, thousands of people are gathered here at Devonshire Green, venting their anger about the killing of an unarmed black American called George Floyd by 4 white officers. His death has sparked anger and protest in many parts of the world, including here in the UK, where protesters are calling for justice and equal treatment of both black and white. However, many protesters are saying the UK is not innocent either, and the government should do more to stop racism.
Watching the protests in America, because the UK is not innocent. We just wanted to join this one, do our part.
And yourself?
Yeah, same. Just there's no justice, so we just want to be here and not be silent and just say we care,
We've seen thousands of people gathered here today. Are you surprised with the turnout?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised. It's really big. We thought there'd be less people because of the rain, but we're glad everyone still, came and marched and protested. It's been great.
Yeah, it's a good turnout, I think, yeah.
In terms of what you've had today or what you've seen, what kind of impact do you think this will have?
I think a big one. I think there's been protests across the country now, and I think, it's getting louder. I think they've got to listen. The government's got to listen now.
Yeah, I agree, yeah.
The fact that most of the people who turned up here today are young people like yourself, do you have hope? And does that tell you that integration and diversity is appreciated here?
Yeah, I think young people are the future, so I'm just really glad that we've all turned out, because I think we're going to make a change for sure.
Single day, you see, it's hard for me to say because you let my people die every day. Victimized, we face racism in most every brutal way. And institutionalized, you look at us and lock us into your society. We're going insane and you don't want anything to change. And the UK is not innocent just because it's not screaming racism in our face. Our systems are played. Our systems are played. We're oppressed in most every subtle way. And this affects so loud, that nasty sound that leaves you down, that tells you that you're lesser than the white man who walks around. Dear police, we're stuck in a rigged game where some of you play by different rules because it's us. Our hearts break and bleed at the seeing of you beating us down just because you don't like the skin that's on us. We're afraid as we hold out our hands and we say, officer, please don't hurt me. I'm not gonna move. Is it that thin layer of blue that makes you feel like you're entitled to?
It's been a great turnout, honestly better than expected when we were organising. We weren't sure of how many people would come. And I think it's beautiful to see how much solidarity there is in Sheffield with the Black Lives Matter movement.
Speaking of solidarity, as you mentioned, thousands of people have turned up here today. Was it something that you were expecting?
The number?
Yeah.
It wasn't expected to be this large of a number, but again, regardless, the turnout is wonderful.
We've seen this happen before. We've been here before. Do you think this time this will make a big impact?
I think one of the things that we focused on is making sure that people understand that there are organizations set up and that they can set up their own organizations too to make difference in this community. It's not the same as bringing people together and being outraged all over again. We have to make active changes tomorrow and in the next year, actively in Sheffield and all over the UK.
Yourself, you are one of the organizers. What motivated you to join the organization to organize an event like this?
Yeah, I was one of the main organizers, and honestly, I just woke up one day and I thought to myself, what's going on in Sheffield? We've got protests in London. I'm hearing about things that are going to happen in Manchester, but Sheffield's silent. So if no one else is doing anything, then let me go find my people and let me start something. That was the motivation.
And just a final one from me. Do you think this time there will be a difference, looking at most of the people that turned up here today are young people like yourself?
I think that was another huge part of it for us as well. The main organizers, it was very important for us to bring together young people to make sure that the next generation knows what's in place for them to achieve whatever they want to achieve, for them to become the great people they want to be. And we have to make sure that we're supporting that. So the turnout, especially with it being young ethnic people, is absolutely incredible.
I think, honestly, for me, as an American, this is pretty surprising for Sheffield to be doing a protest like this, but I'm glad that it's put to awareness that the things that are going on, especially in America, but not only in America, everywhere else around the world, the racism that happens, that we need to put out and let people know, like, we need justice, no peace. So I'm glad that we're doing this protest today to let people know, like, yeah, this is happening and we need to be aware about it and we need to do something about it. So
I didn't know you're even American, but now that you mention it, it's so good to speak to you.
Yeah.
Personally, how do you feel seeing thousands of people here standing in solidarity with black people like you in America?
You know, it feels amazing. Like, I didn't think coming here would be this many people, especially for Sheffield, considering the amount of demographics that are here in Sheffield. But I'm really glad to see this many people supporting Black Lives Matter and the Black Lives Matter movement as well. So I'm really happy about this.
Some of us who has never been to America, speak to us. What's the atmosphere like for black people over there? Some of us, we just hear it on TV.
It's in America, I would say, compared to the UK, like, the racism in America is a little bit more blatant, like, it's more outward, whereas in the UK it's a bit more passive and less, you know, it's not as outward as America as much. So you get to witness a lot of the things happening with us black people, and I'm just glad that people are realizing and seeing, like, this happens everywhere, even though it is passive here and it's not something that, it's still wrong regardless. So
If I may bring you in as well, your reaction?
Well, I'm American as well, so it's very shocking to see, like, all these people come together and spread awareness. So, like she said, no justice, no peace.
Speaking of the awareness, do you think you've achieved what you kind of like wanted for people to see and hear?
Of course. Like, if you look around, there's so many people of different colors and races, so it's nice to see that everyone is coming together and really, like, you know, care about the black lives.
This is not the first time we've been here, or this has happened in the States. This happens very often. Do you think this time things will change for the better?
Honestly, I mean, this is the most progress I've seen, because it's not my first protest. There have been protests in the past. They would do like one change and then it will go back to normal. But to see, like, so this is like the biggest civil rights movement ever recorded in history. So I feel like there is going to be some sort of change.
yeah, and you can also see, like, in America, all the 50 states are protesting. It's not just Minnesota. What happened to George Floyd? Everyone is protesting about this because this is a problem. We've been going through this for so long with so many other black people's lives being killed for nothing, just for their color. We shouldn't have to be protesting about this. We shouldn't have to. But in this, we know that now, in this world, in reality, letting people know about what's going on is what we need to do. And we need to change this. So protesting and everything else, and being able to donate to these Black Lives Matter movements and signing petitions to be able to help this movement out is what we need to do.
As Americans, how do you feel to hear your president say he will bring the National Guards
He's not my president.
He's not our president. He's not our president. That's it. I don't know who that is. I don't know who that is.
Are you kind of surprised though?
No. No.
He's a racist.
Yeah, we know this. We know this. We're not surprised at all. No, we're not.
And just finally from me, we've seen the 4 officers charged. Last week there were protests. The call was for them to be charged, but charging them is one thing, but convicting them is another.
Yeah, I think we're just gonna have to wait and see. Like, if it ends up being where he's not guilty, it's gonna be a whole nother challenge that we're going
I want him to have a life sentence. I don't want, because you know he took a life, he must do life. I don't want them to do like 4 years in prison with like, 10 years probation. I want like life for all of them.
Are you hopeful at all that this time things will change, knowing that most of the people that have took part in the protests are kind of like young people as well?
You got to be as hopeful as possible with this process. I mean, it does take time. It's been a long stretch, but just like our ancestors, we're doing the same thing now. We're trying to better our community. We're trying to better this world, and that's all we can do for now.
We're basically in the middle of a revolution, so everything is televised and like shown on social media. I think that's why it's so much more amplified.
Killing of George Floyd, I suppose. I mean, and what Trump had to say about it, I mean, I couldn't believe it.
Yourself?
I suppose realising that, we're a part of history that can actually do something about the future, really. I mean, I've got 2 children who are mixed race, so obviously as a mother that affects them, and it's just talking about your place in history, I guess. The fact that it was just so shocking what's happened in America, really. That has really brought it to the forefront, really. People are dying quite cold-bloodedly and kind of getting away with it. Because what? Because they're black. That's wrong. I don't want to live in a society like that.
Speaking of history, we've seen history repeating itself all the time. This is not the first time people have gathered here protesting for a change. Do you think this time this will have a bigger impact compared to what had happened before?
Hope so. I think that globally, because things are happening at the same time, and maybe because of the pandemic, we do have a sense of things happening in the world at the same time. So maybe it's different. We are in a different chapter. The world is different now. So I'm hoping so. This can't carry on happening.
It's really, I'll tell you one thing it has really, really made me realise is that, the sort of message that white people have to stand with black people, and that silence gives complicity. And that is, I mean, if I've taken anything away from this, then I've taken that away. It has really, really brought that home to me, how important that is.
As white people, do you understand sometimes what people say? We don't understand why black people are always protesting, or the word why black life matters, but every life matters.
Well, I don't think that black people are protesting all the time, to be honest. I don't kind of see it as that, kind of like, oh, there they go again. This is something that has to happen. I mean, I don't know, maybe other people do, but I do kind of like empathise with minorities, and I don't kind of see it as, something that isn't, is just their problem. Really, it's that people's problem, the injustice in the world, inequality.
I think it's true to say that, there are several posters around the place saying, I don't understand. And I think, speaking as a white person, if you haven't actually had those experiences directly yourself, then you probably don't understand. Don't understand in your feelings, but it doesn't mean to say that you can't understand in your mind.
Yeah.
And you can, of course. So
I don't want to, as a white person, I don't want to live in a world where that is allowed. I don't want to live in a society where that is allowed to happen to anybody. Is that so? So it is everybody's problem. It has to be. I don't want to live in a world where there isn't black culture around me, and that isn't part of our foundations. I don't want to do that. Why should I don't think that would be very enriching, interesting. I just don't think it would be. We would have the same quality of life. So this is the society that we have, so we have to make it good and we have to make it just.
Just a final one from me, but briefly. You mentioned earlier that you've got 2 daughters that are mixed race.
I've got a daughter and a son. He's my daughter.
Do you fear sometimes that, I will get her in a minute, do you fear that sometimes she will get treated differently compared to you?
I'll tell you something that's really interesting, right? My daughter is 20, right? My son is 25, right? A young mixed race man living in Pittsmore in Sheffield, which is, you know, multicultural. Yeah, but I'll tell you something, he's also severely disabled and he will never lead an independent life. And isn't it sad when a mother thinks that's the thing that saved him, probably against brutality because of his race, the fact that he's so severely disabled he'll never, you know, lead a normal life. That is kind of something when a mother thinks that about her son. Oh, it's a good job he's disabled because otherwise he might have come against loads of racial prejudice. So that, you know, kind of makes you think, doesn't it, what kind of a society is this? So as a mother, yeah, I mean, I suppose, I think it's, as a mother, I would be, worried if a young black man was kind of going out there. I'd be worried about what people thought about him, as in, like, you know, the presumptions, negative presumptions that they had about him. So it's kind of different in my case, really.
My reaction to today's event, I think it's a really good thing that we're actually coming out and actually coming together as a unity, because this is what's necessary. We've had so many times where we've started things and obviously, you know, sometimes things don't work out and we go back to the same old thing. But hopefully this time we will stand up together and make the right, you know, way to go on forward.
Speaking of standing up, are you surprised that history is repeating itself every now and then, not only in the United States but here across the UK as well?
Am I surprised that history is repeating itself?
Yeah.
I don't think things have really changed, to be honest. Sometimes, I mean, this has been going on, as you know, from the 50s, the 60s, all the time, and we have people like what do you call him? We have people who stand for us. I can't think of the
Civil Rights Movement.
Civil Rights Movement. I can't remember the names right now. But I think, to be honest, we have to know about ourselves, learn about who we are and our identity, and I think that's what's missing. Because it's always like somebody's telling us who we are. We have to find out and do our own research and find out about ourselves, because they will not be teaching this in schools or education. So we have to educate ourselves and recognise and find out that we are more than anyone could say. Do you know what I mean? So it's for us to find out about ourselves, know thyself.
Yes, we've been protesting across the world for decades, but this time the killing of George Floyd has kind of brought more unity among the African-American community and across the world, the black community. Is there any hope for us?
There's always hope. Of course. I think we are really peaceful people, but I think the way we've been treated, it's almost like our identity's been stolen from us. Obviously with slavery and things what's been going on, but we rise and we'll always rise because that's who we are. So.
And do you fear that your children will be going through similar things that you did maybe the time you were younger, and knowing the fact that most of the time black people are not judged by their actions but by their color?
I think if we, as generations go on, if we don't do something and recognize the issues, what's always coming over and over again, it's not going to get any better. And obviously we're doing this for our generation to come, who's not actually here yet, or the younger generation. And we have an organisation called Action Collective. And Action Collective is actually about coming together, supporting our people and unifying as well. So we actually can get us on Facebook and you'll know more about what we do.
Just a final one from me. Do you think today's event will have a bigger impact compared to like the previous protest?
It depends what we do after this. It's all right having a protest, but there needs to be some action with it. And this is what usually happens. We do these protests, and then after a bit it dies down, and then everybody goes back to what they were doing. So but We have to, that's what Action Collect is about. It's recognizing that it's not just about a protest. We should have demands and what we want to do and work together, because you can't expect someone who pulls you down to be your saviour. We have to save ourselves.
I feel like it's just really important to highlight the injustices that are going on in the world. Like, it's not just America, it's in England too. So I feel like when we're all coming together, it's just showing that we're not standing against injustice, and that, you know, it's just really important to show that we care about everyone and not just going to let all of this injustice keep happening.
Yourself?
I just think it's really important that we all come together and like stand, and I think it's just really good that everyone's here today, and like we want to support everyone because everyone
We've seen thousands of people here today. Are you surprised?
No, I feel like there's a lot of young people, but
it's been a really good turnout.
Yeah,
really, it's a lot more people than what we thought. So yeah, we're really proud, and like hopefully it's all for a good cause at the end of the day. So
Speaking of the turnout, we've been here before and so many people turned up, but it still happened. Do you have hope that now this time it's the young people that are speaking?
well, hopefully. I mean, obviously the younger people is what
they listen more.
Yeah, they listen, and they're our future at the end of the day. So it's really good that the young people come to turn out.
Well, as you can see now, the protest has just ended and everyone is leaving. People are going behind me. But for the past couple of hours, thousands of people have been gathered here, standing in solidarity with their fellow Americans. This all started when an unarmed African-American was killed by 4 white officers. And that sparked anger and protests across the world, including here in the UK. For the past hour, people have been gathered at this park chanting, "Black Lives Matter, no justice, no peace." And this week, we've seen the so-called officers have been charged, and one of them charged with second-degree murder, and the other 4 charged with aiding and abetting murder. But charging those officers is one thing, convicting them is another. Whether this will happen, it is only time that will tell. Bailo Jallo, Sheffield Live News.
The viewers, that was the highlights of this week's events. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.